I am lost in memory. After my father was buried, I put aside the garment the rabbi cut, symbolic of the rending of loss. When it was time to go through his clothing, there were many things to be divided. Most went to charity. I dreamt often about my father after his death. In my dreams, he was always youthful. It is 1961 and I am 11 years old. Adolf Eichmann is on trial in Israel. And in our rec room, 100 dead is a catastrophe. 1 million dead, a statistic. I had always known that my parents were survivors of the Holocaust, but until today, its relationship to me had remained invisible. Knowing that the Holocaust happened wasn't enough. I needed to know what it had done to my parents. When war began, my father was conscripted into the Polish cavalry. After his horse was wounded, he went back to his family in Miechał, only to be taken to a labor camp with his brother. Eventually, they were separated, and my father was sent to Auschwitz. His mother, father, and 2 sisters did not survive. He had not been able to save them. My parents, Ben and Regina, came to Toronto in 1948. My father sprouted chicken feathers, soft, fluffy chicken feathers. He set up shop and became a kosher butcher. I was born in October 1949 on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, in an area of Toronto called Kensington Market. My parents' friends, the group, were always together. They had all known each other in Europe. Look, it's Norman and Rose. They've come all the way from Detroit, Michigan. Norman had a wife and a young child before the war, but they died in a concentration camp. Rose saved my mother's life when they were both in Auschwitz. On the transport from Miechał to Treblinka, Carola was able to jump from the moving train, falling away from her entire family. I was 5 months pregnant when my father was hospitalized with cancer. Tell them I'm dying. On his last night, he turned his head and looked at me. You are carrying my name. The next morning, we watched my father drown. I have inherited the unbearable lightness of being a child of Holocaust survivors, cursed and blessed, black and white and shadowed.
When I was a child, he never made it scary for us. He was very careful not to create trauma. And as the years went by, he shared more of his story.
I almost tried to run away from my past. The farther away you are, the less you have to be reminded of where you came from, and also from the trauma you carry.
You have different experiences when you're a child of a survivor. My father shouted at night. He had terrible nightmares. I mean, you never actually get used to that, being awoken by somebody shouting.
Her father's nightmares only ended when he died, and Marilyn Sinclair still lives with them.
The survivors made Bathurst Manor their home.
Sinclair grew up in this Toronto neighborhood, surrounded by Holocaust survivors. Like all the children here, she grew up with their ghosts, too.
So I had friends whose parents had numbers on their arms, people who suffered from certain mental health issues and physical issues because of the camps, people who talked about the camps or carried a lot of trauma, but we didn't think anything of it. So this is a picture of my father in the DP camp in Germany in 1946.
Trauma was normalized, and her father's would shape her too. Ernie Weiss survived the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp, but rarely spoke about it at home, focusing instead on building a brighter future.
And this is your place.
Yes.
This is where you grew up.
Yes, I love this house.
Left unspoken too, she says. A tremendous pressure to be happy.
We honored our parents by being happy. They wanted happy children. And when you're a kid, you know, you're not always happy. But if we were sad because a boy broke up with us or a girlfriend said something mean to us, we didn't feel that we could cry or show that same level of sadness because we needed to be really good children for our survivor parents.
Weiss went on to become a prominent Holocaust educator.
They told us the only way you're going to get out of here is through the chimneys.
Sinclair became one too, to honor her father even more. But it was only recently, after he died, after years of hiding her own feelings to protect him, that she discovered he'd spent his whole life hiding his struggle with anxiety and depression.
It was hard because we thought the happy family succeeded in making him happy.
And when you found out that he had been struggling,
Maybe we didn't do our job as well as we tried.
So, Joanna, we know from the first-hand accounts like those that trauma can be passed down, but there's science behind it.
Yep, there was a study done several years ago focusing on Holocaust survivors, and they found how there were genetic changes caused by trauma can be passed on to the next generation. And that field is a little controversial, but there's also been work looking at inherited memory trauma, where children absorb their parents' memories as if it were their own. So we spoke to people who have regular nightmares about being in concentration camps themselves, even though they were raised in households where their parents didn't even talk about it that much, and yet they still absorbed it.
So knowing that information does what?
It raises awareness, and we're talking about this today because International Holocaust Remembrance Day is coming up, but there are parallels with other communities, including residential school survivors. The more we talk about it, the more we validate people's experiences, but awareness is key too. And for the people in this story tonight, Adrian, the hope is that that awareness will help combat the rise in anti-Semitism that we've been seeing lately.